your attention follows your intention. If you think about it, what your intention is determines what you're going to attend to. And so I think the ritual has its place, and it has to be recognized for what it is, and it has to be imbued with your awareness and your intention so that it doesn't become empty. We all know numerous empty rituals. The churches, the organized religions are full of them. And they're harmless or not so harmless diversions.
Other considerations? Yeah. Oh, take the mic, please.
Getting back to the taking of such substances, Dr. Israel Regardie, who is the last in the original lineage of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn out of England.
Boy, I'll bet there's somebody who will contest that, but go ahead.
He was the last living English.
He was in that lineage anyway.
Of that lineage. And he had made the statement that he would not accept a probationer into, or a neophyte for initiation until they had undergone 100 hours of psychotherapy, because he had seen how imbalanced people could become through the work of high magic. Do you think that applies to the use of psychedelics?
Do I think psychotherapy should be a precondition to the use of psychedelics? Is that the question? God, let's hope so. I mean, I hope that's the question.
That's the question, veiled by which veils. Do you think that people who do not have knowledge of how the psyche operates, have not really investigated their own psyches, should then take psychedelics, take large doses?
Well, I don't know. Certainly, I don't think psychotherapy is a precondition to taking psychedelics. I mean, psychotherapy is, probably the kindest thing you can say about it is that it's a scam. Certainly, a person should be sophisticated about the dynamics of psyche. And I would, if Ralph's prescription to have clear intention is followed, I don't think a person would arrive at the brink of a psychedelic experience.
If he needed psychotherapy instead.
If they didn't have a healthy interest in the dynamics of the psyche. Most psychotherapy, as it's currently practiced, is, I think, just, as I said at the Albert Hoffman thing, psychotherapy without psychedelics is pissing into the wind and has done a lot more harm than good. What is clear about psychotherapy is that its efficacy depends entirely on the psychotherapist. Freudians, Jungians, Reichians, and what have youites all get the same results, which are 1/3 get better, 1/3 get worse, 1/3 stay the same. So clearly method is useless in psychotherapy. It's something about a bonding between two people to sensibly discuss hang-ups. What I think is generally felt to be true among psychedelic researchers is that early psychedelic trips tend to have a personalistic cast to them, tend to address one's hang-ups, problems in relationships, difficulty in coming to terms with parents and loved ones and so forth. But that people who persist with psychedelic experimentation quickly burn through that. One of the objections that I always sort of had to LSD was that I call it abrasively psychoanalytic. This seems to be a compound that only wants to talk about what are basically therapy issues. It wasn't like that for everybody, I gather, but it was certainly like that a lot for me. I mean, I stuck with psychedelics basically because I was so puzzled by what other people were saying about it. Psilocybin, on the other hand, doesn't seem, at least in my experience, to work that way. It immediately dresses this transpersonal, cosmic, planetary level. So my own exposure to psychoanalytic literature and therapy and that sort of thing was I read all of Mysterium Conjunctionis or Ion, and this is where the real skinny is held. I don't think you can read a better book on the psychedelic experience than Mysterium Conjunctionis. And it doesn't mention psychedelics per se, but it deals with the motifs of transformation. And no, I think that if there's a relationship between psychotherapy and psychedelic shamanism, it's that psychotherapists must apprentice themselves to psychedelic shamans and must learn what they're doing, because they're doing better than 1/3 get better, 1/3 get worse, 1/3 stay the same. Neurosis in extremely shamanically oriented societies with a tradition of psychedelics is almost unknown. And I saw these people work in the Amazon, and their intuition and their perspicacity in dealing with human situations was clairvoyant, you know. I mean, they just could go right into it. And so I think the relationship between psychotherapy and psychedelic shamanism should run the other way. To my mind, and I've made this metaphor many times, but it gives the right feeling to it, psychedelics are to the study of consciousness what the telescope in the 16th century was to the science of astronomy. And, you know, the telescope was suppressed. I mean, Galileo had to humble himself. Giordano Bruno was burned at the stake. Now they want to suppress the inner telescope, the telescope that brings the stars and galaxies constellated in the human psyche up for close inspection. Well, I suspect they shall have the same fate as they had with the suppression of the telescope. They will just be looked at as pedestrian, plebeian Philistines, and the people who had the good sense to advocate this, people like Ralph Metzner, will be hailed as forward-looking visionaries.
The only thing I would add to that analogy, I think, that of the telescope is that because the telescope, after all, is used by astronomers, or rather select elite group of people. The average man probably never in his lifetime looks through a telescope. The significance of the psychedelic drug in terms of enhancing our perception, expanding our consciousness, in addition to that, it does it has a potential for doing it for anybody, not everybody, but anybody who wants and needs it, who feels drawn to it. And so it's a tool that's unique, and this ties back to the theme I mentioned at the beginning. You know, the age of shamanic experts is over. That was the old age. I mean, there will be experts, of course. There are people who are more practiced and skilled and experienced at it. The elders, the ones who've done it the longest time, are the ones you go through for guidance and training and so forth. But it's everyone has to make their own discoveries. Everyone has to explore their own psyche. Nobody else can do that for you. I wanted to say one other thing in relationship to your question, and I don't want you to take this in any way critical of your asking of the question, but I wanted to actually have you think about the assumption, the presupposition that underlies that question. Because you're asking us, in a way, you asked something like, should people who take psychedelics be required to undergo therapy? That's asking a question about who should or should not ingest certain substances. It's a control question. And I understand your intention is, protection of people flipping out and all of that. And but we shouldn't be asking anybody that question. We shouldn't be asking ourselves, basically, or anyone else that question, looking for those kind of criteria.